We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Chesam at Aleph and Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 78a. On the previous summer, there was a contradiction within Rava. Let's say a buyer pays for a field. He pays all of the money except for one zuz, and the seller still wants the zuz. So there's a contradiction within Rava whether that's a final sale or whether we say that it's still possible to retract. And the Gemara now answers the difference is mipnei ra'asa. In one case, we're talking where the field is being sold because it's a bad field. Rashi explains mipnei ra'asa da'anon sahadi develava onsa dezuze nami havimazvin la. Meaning to say, we know for sure that the seller would have sold this field even if he didn't need money because it was a bad field. V'hai da'ayil v'nafek azuze. And the only reason why he's trying to get that last money is memaru ligvos shelo yachzer lokeach. He wants to make sure to collect all the money so that the lokeach cannot retract, so that it can be finalized, so he can get rid of this bad field. So essentially, it depends on the circumstances. If it's clear that he's selling the field because he wants to get rid of the field, it's not because he needs the money. So then in such a situation, even if he's pursuing the money, we say that it is a finalized sale. But otherwise, if he's pursuing the money because it seems that he needs the money, therefore we assume that it is not a finalized sale until he gets all of the money. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Pshita, it is obvious. If he's trying to sell a field for 100, he needs 100. V'lo eshkach, he doesn't find anyone to buy. V'zavin b'masayim, so instead he sells the larger field for 200. V'ka'ayil v'nofek azuze, and he's pursuing the money. So lo kani, so in that situation it would not be a kinyan, meaning to say it would not be a kinyan if the buyer did not give all of the money. Rashi explains, boil is zavuni b'meya hayatzarech l'meya zuze, meaning a person needs 100 zuz. V'ratza limchor sadek ketana, he wants to sell his smaller field b'meya zuz for 100 zuz. V'lo matza lo lochin, he doesn't find buyers. U'machar gedola b'masayim, so instead he sells the larger field for 200. V'ka'ayil v'nafek azuze v'ze'ikvim, and he's trying to get all the money, and this buyer is holding back the money. So then it is obvious lo kani that it's not a kinyan since all the money was not yet given. Da'anon sahadi di al karcho mocher, because we understand that it is that the mocher was forced. Mocher hamocher, the mocher was forced to sell it against his will. V'yachol omer, and he can say l'kacha yisim mechazer achar amos likno sadek katana tachteh. The reason why I'm trying to get all the money is because I want to buy a smaller field. I had to sell this bigger field, and I want to buy a smaller field with the money. So in that situation, it's obvious that it is not a kinyan. But the Gemara continues, what if he wanted to sell a field for 100, he needed 100, v'lo ashkach, and he didn't find people to buy? Rashi says, v'lo ashkach lo motzo lo lochin miyad, meaning he didn't immediately find buyers. V'yitarach havimishkach, now if he would have taken effort, he would have found someone to buy it. V'lo tarach, but he didn't take the effort. V'zavin b'masayim, and instead he sold for 200. V'ka'ayil v'nafek azuze, and he's pursuing the money, he wants all the money. So in that situation, what's the halacha? Kimocher sadeh mibnei ra'asa dami. Maybe we say that in that situation it's the equivalent of selling a field because it is a bad field. Really, he just wants to get rid of the field, and so therefore it would be a kinyan. Olo or no, we say maybe not. Maybe we say that since he's pursuing the money, he needs to get all the money for it to be a finalized sale. And the Gemara says teku. The Gemara leaves that as a question. And Rashi explains, V'ilu haya toreach tuva lachzor achar lochin. If he would take a lot of effort to find a buyer, have a mishkach loche sadekatani, he would have found a buyer for the smaller field. V'lo tarach, but he didn't take the effort. Hukshalo hatorach umachar gadol b'masayim. He didn't want to take the effort. Instead, he sold the larger one for 200. And Rashi continues, V'ayil v'nafek azuze. And again, he's pursuing the money in this case. So what's the halacha? Kimocher sadeh mibnei ra'asa dami. Is it the same as selling a field because it's a bad field? Meaning, kevan demishum tircha dehadure achar lokeach. Since just because of the effort that it would take to sell the other one, he didn't want to bother with the effort, therefore he just decided that he was going to sell this one even though he didn't really need the money. So you see that he didn't really care for this field much. The fact that he was willing to just sell this larger field because he didn't want to take the effort to sell the other field shows he didn't care for the field. It's just as though it was a bad field, and in that situation we should say that it is considered to be a kinyan even if he did not get all the money. Or no, do we say that since he didn't get all the money, it's not considered a finalized kinyan? And again, the Gemara said teku. The Gemara left that as a question. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Sachar es hachamor v'es hakador v'chulu. If he hires the donkey driver, the wagon driver, and then the donkey driver retracts, or the wagon driver retracts, and it's going to be a loss of money, so socher alein matan, he can either hire above them, or he can mislead them. And the idea is that he hires other workers, and he can pay them more, and essentially that's going to be covered by the first workers. And the Gemara says, Ad kama socher alein, how much more can he hire? How much more can he pay the second workers, that essentially the first workers have to compensate that? And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman says, Ad kedei schar, until their wages, meaning until the wages that the first workers are owed. Rashi here explains, Ad kedei schar, until their wages, Meaning to say, Emasu etzlo ktsas hamalacha. Let's say the first workers did some of the work. Let's say they did 20% of the work. V'lo kiblu klum, and they didn't accept any money yet. They weren't paid. So socher alein kol mashu chayiv lohen Yosef lachem. So what he can do is all of that money. Let's say he owes 20% of the wages to these first workers. He just won't pay those first workers the 20%, and instead he'll give those wages to the second workers v'yigmru, and they'll finish up the work. So essentially, what's happening in that situation is the first workers are paying those second workers extra because they're not receiving wages for the work that they did. Those wages instead are going to the second workers. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman. Rava asks Rav Nachman the following question. It said in the Brisa earlier, at Arboim v'chamishim zuz, it says that the owner, he can pay the second workers much more. He can pay them 40 or 50 zuz more, and that's going to be at the expense of the first workers. It's not just the amount that the first workers did. And the Gemara answers, Amar Lei said to him, Kitanyu ahi, that Brisa, what is it referring to? Shabasa chavila liyado. It's talking about when the package came to his possession. Rashi explains, Shabasa chavila liyado, the package came to his possession, meaning let's say the owner, he has in his possession a lot of the tools of those first workers. It's like the way of craftsmen when they accept a job, they bring their tools to the house of the balabayis. He can now sell those tools and use that money to pay the second set of workers. So that's what the Bryce is saying. He can pay them 40 or 50 zuz more, and that's going to be at the expense of the first workers. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hasocher es hachamor laholichu bahar. If somebody rents a donkey to have it walk in the mountains, v'holichu bebika, instead he takes it to the valley, or bebika v'holichu bahar, or he was supposed to take it to the valley, instead he takes it to the mountain. Afilu zu eser milan v'zu eser milan, even if the journey in both cases is 10 mil, v'meis and the animal dies, chayiv, he's chayiv. The idea over here is, he didn't take it to the place that he was supposed to take it. Rashi explains, Bebika v'holicha bahar, he was supposed to take it to the valley, instead he took it to the mountain, Barosh Shahar, at the top of the mountain, V'yafal bisha derech cholak v'yasher. Now, even though the path at the top of the mountain was smooth, it was straight, chayiv is still chayiv. B'gemara mefarish, now the Gemara will explain, Ma'ishna reisha hacha, d'lo maflik bein huchlika lehuchama. Over here in the reisha, meaning right here at the beginning of the Mishnah, there's no distinction made between how it died, whether it slipped or whether it got hot. Uveseifa maflik leholicha bahar v'holicha bebika, but at the end, meaning in the Sefer, what we're about to read, they do make distinctions in terms of how the animal died. The Gemara will ask that question. The Mishnah continues, Hasocher es hachamor l'holicha bahar. If somebody rents a donkey to take it on the mountains, v'holicha bebika, instead he takes it in the valley, im hechlika pater. So in that case, if it slips, he's going to be pater. The idea is that if it slips in the valley, so it was less likely to slip, that's not his fault. V'im huchma, however, if it gets hot, it's hotter in the valley. So chayiv, then he's chayiv because what he did, that change that he made, essentially is what caused the animal to die. L'holicha bebika v'holicha bahar. Let's say he was supposed to take it to the valley, instead he took it to the mountain. Im hechlika chayiv. So then if it slips, he's going to be chayiv. It's more likely to slip on the mountain. V'im huchma, but if it died because of heat, pater, then he's pater. It's actually less likely to die because of heat on the mountain. Im machmas hamal, if it was because of the fact that it was at the elevation, so then chayiv, he's going to be chayiv. And Rashi explains, Vim hechlika pater, if the animal slips, it's pater, meaning to say if the animal slips in the valley, shebahar hi ru'uyal hachlik yoser, sharoshar charum meshupal etzadim, because at the mountain, it's more likely that it would have slipped. The top of the mountain is going to be slanted. It's easier for it to slip in that situation. Vim hochma chayiv. Now, if the animal gets hot in the valley, he's going to be chayiv. Shabika mala hevel, because the valley, there's a lot of hevel, there's a lot of hot air. Lefi shaharim seviva, because the mountains surround it. Vein aver sholit, but it's hard for the air to get there. And machmas hamal huchma, if it's because of the fact, if it got hot because of the fact that it took energy to get to the top of the mountain, ba'alosam irregular harlarosha, meaning the animal was ascending from the bottom of the mountain to the top, that caused the animal to get hot and die. So in that case, the renter would be chayiv. And the Mishnah continues, Hasocher es hachamor, if somebody rents a donkey, v'hivrika, we'll translate that for now as the donkey goes blind. The question is, does the masker need to provide a different donkey to the socher, to the renter? Oshanas is angorior, let's say the donkey gets taken by the king, it gets taken essentially as a tax, again, does he need to provide another one? So the Mishnah says, Omer lo, hareshal chalafanecha, the masker can say to the socher, take what is yours, meaning essentially it's your bad fortune, I don't need to provide another donkey. Mesa o nishbra, now if the donkey dies or it breaks a leg, chayiv lahamid lo chamor, then he needs to give him a different donkey. And Rashi explains, V'hivrika b'gemar mefarish, the Gemara will explain Hivrika, o shenasis an goryesh and etolu ala avodas hamelech, or the donkey was taken for work for the king. Omer lo masker l'socher, the masker can say to the socher, harei shel chalafanecha, telena kemoshi smuya, take it as it is, take it blind, v'teilech and go. Sha'af mazal l'chagarm, because it's also your bad fortune. Kamo mazali, just like mine. V'tarach v'yasher o sabadrachim, you're going to have to make sure that it stays properly on the roads, because it can't see properly. V'gabe an goryanami, when it comes to the tax as well. Hamtena Shatoshav, just wait until it's returned by the king. Sha'af mazlacha garam v'nafset shenenu. It's also your bad fortune. We're both going to lose out. And Rashi continues, Meso nishbur, if the donkey dies or breaks a leg, shemafset kol secharo. Now the renter is losing all of his rent. Chayiv hamasker limchor haor v'hanevela leklavim. The masker is going to need to sell the hide, and he's going to need to sell the nevela for the dogs. Ulahosef mos, he'll need to add on money. Ulahamid lo chamor, and give him a different donkey. He has to give a different donkey to the renter. O yiskor lo acher b'dmei nevela, or he can rent another one with the money from the nevela. Sharei chamor zeh shibadlo, because essentially there's a lien on this donkey. O yachzer lo secharo, or he's going to have to return to him the money that he paid for the rent. And the Gemara says, Ma'ishna reisha de lo kamaflig, o ma'ishna seifa de kamaflig. What's the difference that at the beginning of the Mishnah there are no distinctions made? The fact that the renter took the animal to the wrong area, therefore he's obligated. But at the end of the Mishnah, the Seifa goes on to say that it depends how the animal died in terms of whether the renter is obligated. This is the question that Rashi alluded to before. And the Gemara answers, Amri Devei Rabbi Yanai, they say in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, Reisha Shemesa Machmas Avir. In the Reisha of the Mishnah, in the beginning of the Mishnah, the animal died because it wasn't accustomed to that particular kind of air, and therefore the renter is responsible. The Amrina Navira, the Har Kotla, the Amrina Navira, the Bika Kotla. We say that it's the air of the mountain that killed it, or it's the air of the valley that killed it. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Kegon Shemesa Machmas Uvtzuna. What happened in the Reish of the Mishnah is that it died because it got tired, it was weary. Rashi explains, the kamaflig, you're making a distinction between huchla kol huchma. Again, at the end of the Mishnah, you make a distinction between if it slips or if it gets hot. Shemesa machmas aver. So the first answer was that in the Reish of the Mishnah, it died because of the air. Lo huchla kol lo huchma. It didn't slip, and it wasn't because of the heat. Umesa meyatzma, just died on its own. Hoel v'shinaba, since it did something it wasn't accustomed to. Yachol lomar lo, he could say to him, lo mesa zu ala machmas aver. The owner can say to the renter, it died because of the air. Lo haisa limudali gadol ba'aver har v'kashal. It wasn't used to the air of the mountain. Although it wasn't used to the air of the valley, it was difficult for it. And Rashi continues, the Gemara then had a second answer. Uvtzuna means ayefus v'yagimim asa, means to say that the animal got tired from carrying. Holicha bahar, for example, if he took the animal to the mountain, yachal lomar lo, so the owner can say to the renter, ayefus hamalisha also l'rosh har, hoi lo mitchila. What happened is that the animal got tired from climbing up the whole mountain. Al kein aifa lo li'achar zman, that's why it got tired later on, kishalcha b'derech, when it went on the road hachaloka, when it went on the smooth road at the top of the mountain, v'yagia tachas maso meis, and it got tired under the burden and it died. V'imshina lo licha babika, and let's say he changed, and instead the renter took the animal to the valley, afapi shalo ra'inu osam mazas, even though we didn't see that the animal's sweating, v'lo hayom cham ma'od lomar huchma, it wasn't very hot, we didn't see it get hot. Yesh lomar, we could say him holcha bahar, had the animal went on the mountain, hayo ha'aver sholit sham, so there the air is nice, v'nosin bakoch, would have had more strength, v'lotiga tachas maso, it wouldn't have got tired under the burden. But in the valley there is no air. Therefore it lost strength. It was difficult for the animal. And so again, that's why we don't make distinctions in the Reisha of the Mishnah. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rabba Amar Rabba says, Kagon Sheikisha Nachash. The case in the beginning of the Mishnah is it gets bit by a snake. So again, you can say that the reason why it got bit by a snake is because it was taken to a different area. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Hamani Rabbi Meir, who's the author of the beginning of the Mishnah. It's actually Rabbi Meir. Diyamar, because Rabbi Meir says, Kol ha'mavir al das shel balabayis, anybody who changes from the original intention of the balabayis. And the idea of this answer is that the beginning of the Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, but as the Mishnah continues, it's not the opinion of Rabbi Meir, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Ches Amud Beis.